Hi, I'm Phil Dispenza, and this is Collecting, Investing, or Somewhere in Between. This is our very first episode after our little introduction that we gave 2 weeks ago. And we're finally going to delve into specific hobby areas. And I wanted to start with vintage video games, specifically Atari 2600. This entire video is going to be on Atari 2600. The Atari 2600 right now is super hot as a collectible. The grading company I just came out 2 years ago. Like I mentioned in the first video, I'm not avoid trying to promote or say any specific websites or companies. Just keep it miscellaneous. Um, but the new company, grading company that came out, has been you've been seeing on certain auctions record sales of Atari games. It started with Nintendo originally, and they expanded to Atari and some other vintage video games. So the Atari itself, most people, if you grew up like I did in the '70s, was your first real video game system with cartridges. I mean, you had Pong units and stuff, and I might go into that in another video. I don't think there's too much value with Pongs anyway. But Atari is tough because there's probably a lot of games that you can invest in. Collecting's a whole nother thing. When I was a kid, um, I think I stopped buying Atari games by 82, 83 when ColecoVision came out. So I think I had about maybe 48, 50 games for the system. When I got the ColecoVision, I actually got the expansion where you could play the Atari games on the ColecoVision system, so you didn't have to hook up your Atari 2600. But I thought I had a pretty big library, and it turns out U.S. released games top 600. There's 600 different games. If you count Sears, we're going to get into that too, because there's certain collectors out there who don't deem Sears as a separate company. But we're going to go with some rarity. I'm going to explain a little about the Atari because there's videos, and this is another reason why I wanted to create these videos out there promoting Atari right now, and a little misinformation on what's out there. 12 years ago, I decided, I've been documenting when I got into collecting. I mentioned in the first video, vintage video games. It started with the Atari. It was like 95, 96. I'm not sure the exact. I think it was summer of 95, if I'm right. And so I mentioned this kid came into the store, and I picked up from a garage sale. He was like, I just bought these games and stuff. And, I brought it home. I played it. And nostalgia light bulb, I said last time, went off in my head. And if I felt this nostalgic about these games, then other people my age would. And I'm 25 years old at the time, so I went and did my research and found out, I found the price guide. And again, this is pre-internet, where we went to news groups. I mentioned that also in the first video, and I found a list of supposedly all the Atari games out there, and it was a variation list where you would have one game and then you'd have variations of that game, whether it's the cartridge or the box. The guy didn't have manuals at the time. I've been working on it. So, I was contributing to his website, his list through email. And eventually I printed out my own list, and I started adding to the list as I started going to garage sales and flea markets. That's when I was buying stuff like crazy. Most games you got for a quarter or less. Box games, I don't think you paid more than $1, if that, because this is when nobody cared about it, and that's exactly when you want to buy something. So, as an investor, I'm going to promote what I think should be a good investment. Other people have already said it, and if it's rare, of course, that's going to be a good investment. But you can't just buy anything that's sealed or anything that's old or whatever and assume that it's going to go up in value. So I took this guy's list, and after a while, we didn't hear anything from him. So in the early 2000s, I kept my list going, and I'd find new boxes, I'd find new cartridge variations, and I decided I was going to start adding manual variations and other paperwork and things. And mid to late 2000s, probably 2006, I said, you know what, this list can have, it was the type of thing, it was more like an honor system where people told him, oh, I have this variation, and he'd put it on the list. And I wanted to document that. So I created a website. It's probably very informative. The cartridges I put rarities, I'm probably going to eventually scrutinize that list, because some things are probably not as rare cartridge-wise on that list. As I put rare. I think rare is like 1 in 10 copies are this version, because there's warehouses full of some of the later re-releases, variations of certain games that have come to light over the past 10, 15 years. So originally it was rare because I only counter it 1 or 2 times out of 50 cartridges. But with eBay, I mentioned eBay. Oh well, and other, but mainly eBay. But you would see all of a sudden now, especially from Venezuela, there's warehouses of Atari stuff down there. So I said, okay, I'm going to document everything. I want proof. I don't just want this list. So there were certain things, not too many items, I was removing from the list. If you could create it, like if you can glue an end label of one version onto a original version or something, either I put can be created in the list, or I took it out altogether because it's too easy to forge. So most of the times, if something was a cross variation where it's an end label from one version and a main label of another one, if I found it in the wild, most likely at that time somebody's not going to be fooling around, trying to create their own variations, because nobody cared about the video games at the time. Atari had died. Everybody was concentrating on who knows, Super Nintendo maybe, or N64, some Xbox, PlayStation, things like that. By the mid 90s, that's what everybody's collecting. So Atari, nobody cared about in television. I'm going to get into at least most of the other video game systems, vintage, pre-Nintendo, next video. And then I'm probably going to make another video on the later ones from Nintendo on. But I wanted to talk specifically just for the 2600. And I created this website. The website's called videogamevariations.com. And the reason why I called it that, not like Atari 2600, because I wanted to create a website that was visual for tons of systems, not just Atari. So I wanted 5200, 7800, in television, ColecoVision. In television, I started a long time ago, at least 10 years ago, and I never got too far with it. And things got packed away, and just the Atari 2600 is like a mountain of work. And if you go to the website, there's still a few third-party companies that I haven't done anything with. I keep saying I'm going to, but there's only so much time in a day, and you got so many things going on. But I wanted to get all the manuals. That's the most. If you go on the website, the things missing the most are the manuals, and that's because manuals, if you do scans, a box, you can do front and back of a box. Cartridge, you do the main label, end label, you're doing 2 scans. Manual, if you're lucky and you fold, you might fit 2 pages on one, and then you got to cut it and separate it. And most manuals start out as at least 4 pages, but 12 pages, 16 pages, 20 pages. So it's a lot of scanning, it's a lot of work, resizing and things. So go to the website, and I'm going to give you my advice on buying. So when Atari came out in 77, they came out with an original library of 9 games. And the 9 games are not sealed. And that's the thing where you hear people talk about, oh, this is Combat. Combat came with the system. And, I saw one video, the guy's like, oh, this is a sealed Combat, and it's from 1978. In essence, it isn't. And I was trying to correct him on that, because the variations. And a lot of times, if you look at like Peanuts, Charlie Brown. Um, Something could be made in the 80s, but the copyright will still say in like 1966 or 64. I forgot exactly. And that was the copyright of the Peanuts. And they would just throw that copyright on every time because that's when it was originally copyrighted. They didn't care when the item was being made. So Atari came out with 9 games. And as the games, the year, 2 years, 3 years progressed, they started changing the box. And I'm going to show you, at least the first 9 boxes prior to like 82 or up to 82, when they started changing formats and things. And most of the games that were released in 77, 78, by 82, they must have produced enough of them that they said, okay, our inventory's out there, and we don't need any more, so we're not going to make any more. And then, Atari sold off. Somebody else bought it in the mid 80s after the crash, 85. And then they started re-releasing games that were out, and then they came out with some new games. So again, I'm going to cover a lot of that stuff. And so we'll start with the 9 original games. Now, Combat came with the system, but I tried to pull out as many examples. I have a lot. I mean, 300 and something box games, a lot of them sealed. But again, this is Starship. If you look on the side, you'll see an individual number, 03. Now, I'm not too sure exactly how Atari separated their product numbers, but this is a gatefold cover, meaning it opens like a book. So you open it up, and there you go. You got the manual over here, and you have your cartridge with the little slot indent. So this is the way Intellivision games would come out for a long time, actually. But this was your first release box. The back always looked like this. It always said something distributed in Canada. No copyright, no printers, and that's what I was going to get into. So this is the first variation, and the guy who was doing that Combat, it's the 1978, and I told him no, it's not. And the reason why was because I wanted to document, because the original list of Atari games for the Atari 2600 made by Atari, he would list Starship, and then he'd have a different version with a different back, a later version. But they didn't have them in any specific order. So I started to investigate and look at the boxes a lot, more close. And I discovered on the bottom flap, they had printers. Now, early on, they didn't care. They didn't put printers. And they decided we're going to go Blackjack. This is another game that was originally released as one of the 9, but this is a second printing box. Second print is game program, big yellow letters. I think almost every variation that released. This came out in 78. And on the bottom flap, if I can see if there is a bottom flap, yes, you will see. I'm going to try to get a little closer. You see the little printer? There you go. This says Bertco Graphics, and it has a little clock, and most of them do have little clocks that show one or two of the months will be blocked out. It's just like 12 for 12 months. So this one's blocked out on number 7, and then there's a 78, which means this box was printed by Bertco Graphics in July of 1978. And this is where I was correcting this guy with the Combat, because even though it might say 1978, it says 1978 on this version, but some of them won't. It doesn't mean that that was when it was released. Now, in this case, it is, because I figure print the box in July, release this version of the game in August, September, something like that. Probably I would guess a 2-month window from after they printing, if that. I mean, I don't know how quickly they did. And so some of the game program boxes do not have a month, which means they were probably printed before a specific time frame. So this is July. So maybe early 78, there are no documentation of printers, but somewhere along the line, the printer maybe ask to be identified on the box. I'm not too sure. But I was trying to see, because there's like an ad pack San Francisco. There's quite a few, Ivy Hill. And if you go to my website under Atari, I have, under the Atari, it's like Atari made games, not other third party like Activision stuff. I have a general Atari variation link right at the top. And it breaks down the cartridge evolution, and then it breaks down the box evolution. And somewhere along the line, I'm going to get to the manual evolution. But the boxes up until 82, I'm trying to see how many I have here: 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think. Up until 82, and then they start fooling around with different designs and things. They go to a silver box and stuff, but we'll get into that. So the second release was Game Program. So the only way I could document the releases themselves, as to like figure out which ones came first and put that list in order, which the other guy didn't have in any specific order, was using this printer, the printer date box on a little tiny flap when it was the box printed. And we're trying to document. I've been working with this guy in Brazil, Daniel. He's a great guy, and he's been helping me out fill in a lot of missing variations, because it's a lot of work. People don't understand, and that's when I get into investing part of these variations. It's going to be specific ones are going to be worth more than others. So an original Starship, original Combat, even though they're not sealed, they're probably good investments, especially if you can get them in the high grade, because the Combat came with the system. Unless you bought the system, you're not going to get that version. It's 1970, because these were released in 77 only. And, it was new. I think Atari was $300 or something. You always know that every time a new system comes out, it's super high usually, and then it eventually drops, and then games come out, and everybody has it, so the price drops on the games. But so I started documenting. If you go on my general Atari variation link, I actually document which box has this version. So Game Program, there's a blackjack 0, I don't remember what blackjack number is, but it's from original line. Third box, I'm going to show you an Othello, and I actually have an Othello for the fourth box too. Atari decided to add warranty information. So on the back of the box, it's solid green background, and whatever the box was, this is the third version. And again, this is how I say Othello has a green box version, and then Othello might have the next box version. But then all of a sudden there's a box version in between, and I can't find it. It might be out there, might not be out there. And when I get through to the next two, I'm going to point out something. But so again, I looked at the box tab, and these versions are only released from a specific time period. Sometimes they're only released, I don't know, 5 to 8 months, and then they change it again. So I guess they thought this is a little too hard in the eyes. So they went through, they changed it to a fourth version. Here's Othello again. Now it looks a lot nicer. It's easy on the eyes. You got a white background with black letters. And so this is box version number 4. Again, we're going to have variations with some of these boxes, because this is a white box. Copyright date is inside the white box. And again, this is a glued. You're going to see certain things. Now, if something's glued, it's sealed, most likely, unless somebody re-glues it. And that's what these grading companies are for. They're supposed to be able to determine if something's been opened and re-glued. Now, this has a little tiny tab, which for this version is a little ripped. But this would be actually glued on the outside here. And then after you open it, you would tuck it, there's a little tab spot, you would tuck it inside. So printer the printer is on the bottom of this tiny tab. The thing is this is glued. The other ones were just tucked in. So how do I know what the date is on this? Well, I can do two things. I can actually I used to try to take a pen or something and a light and shine through and see if I could peek in. Um, a lot of times that would work. Sometimes it wouldn't, depending on how dark the printing in was on the inside. The other thing is you come across copies that are open already. And that's already, it's easy to determine because you just see it. So I early on, I was buying tons and tons and tons. So like something like Othello, I might have had, I don't know, 10 box copies, various printings and stuff. So we move on to the next box version. Now this version was released in 81. This is Breakout, but you're going by the back of the box. White box. This time the copyright is outside. There aren't, this I think was released maybe three to four, maybe 5 months at most. So if you find this version, it might be one of the rarest of the titles. So Breakout might have 6 different box versions. I don't have it offhand. And this is where I was going to explain it. Superman, probably one of the popular, suggested to grade because everybody knows Superman's DC. And when Superman was released, it was that green, well, it was red. It was the solid color through. And the box I just showed you with the white, with the printing inside and the white with the printing outside, I had no proof that that version of Superman existed. And I've been collecting for a long time. Now it's been a good 25 years. But I had no proof that that version of Superman existed. And one day I go to a video game store, and sure enough, it's sitting there. And I'm like, the guy threw a sticker over him. I'm like, if you look at my site under Superman, those variations, you're going to see the price sticker. I try to peel it off, but it's either you peel it off and you rip the box, or you just, try to peel off a little and get as much off without damaging it as possible. But all of a sudden, Superman had these 2 versions. So I created a list of what I think should exist and may not. And I actually put that up on the site somewhere. I don't remember if it's the first page or the Atari page itself. It's probably the Atari page. It's probably under that general variation information. But those are variations that should be out there. And Daniel's been helping me fill in some gaps. And once in a while, I'll just go on randomly, on the internet, and I'll try not to mention anything, and find a version that I didn't have. It could be any system. I mean, the other day I found Pitfall, and it was the French version, and we're going to talk about the Canadian version, which is an English-French. It's always English-French with Canadians. Then they got international and stuff. But it was a sticker over the English box. And again, there were several titles in Activision that actually had that, but I didn't have that documented for Pitfall, and just accidentally came across it. So, doing this on my own, it's a lot tougher because, again, I only have so much time. So when people are helping me out, if you come across certain things, send it my way. And, I'm not making any money off of this. This is for just, I love information. I love data. I love lists. So I wanted to, show proof. I'm a person of proof. I don't like speculation of things. So, sometimes if I have a little free time, I'll do research and just type in a title, something on my list of should exist, and see if I could come across it. And once in a while I do. So after, I put something here I didn't want to. After the box, the white warranty box with the date outside, I guess, printing costs money, extra ink. So this is a sealed copy of Warlords. I actually have 2. And I'm going to get into sealed stuff because I find it so funny how much it's shot to the roof just because of speculators. But on the back, if I'll try to get it a little closer and on an angle because the shrink wrap will reflect, it says we call it limited 90 day, which is right in the middle. They get that's all the warranty. They got rid of the big box, and this I think was the version of Combat, maybe that the guy was showing. The limited 90-day warranty. Now, most of these are shrink wrap. Now, this is funny because I have two copies of this. I said mentioned sealed. Both are the limited 90 days. One's shrink wrapped, one's not, and they're both the glued tab style. And what I was going to mention before is if you look at my site, and I create variations for, if it's really a different variation, there's actually three different tabs. You have the tuck-in tab, which is well, the gatefold I'm not going to count because there's only 9 games, but the tuck-in tab. Then they went to the glued tab, and then they have what I call the cereal box tab, which if you open a cereal box, it has that little tuck-in part on the top. So you're going to see limited 90-day warranty, and it might have 3 variations. It might be a tuck-in, it might be a glued, and it might be a fold-in, or it might be that cereal box tab. So I'm counting that as 3 different variations because it's 3 different boxes. And what you might also discover, if you look at my site, I try to explain things as much as possible. Is the printers, 2 printers might be making the same exact box, and sometimes there's a color differentiation. So you might create a variant on colors, but a lot of times you can't tell the difference except for the printer. So you'll see a listing for one variation where I list Ad Pack San Francisco, and I'll put 881 or something, and then I'll put Bertco Graphics 678 or something, and I try to put them in, again, date order. And sometimes the boxes are made 2-3 years apart by different printers, but I can't find any real distinguishing differences. There might be tiny differences on the little flaps, a color thing. There's a stripe. There might be a product number on one that's not on the other. But a lot of times I'm not differentiating that. Okay, so that's pretty much what Atari did until they went through and did they changed the whole color things. They started making some games with unique a unique back. I'm going to say specific design. Berserk, Defender, Star Raiders. They had a specific thing where actually I'm just saying the games that actually came with comic books, but they have their color, but they don't fit into any of the ones I just showed you, the variations I showed you. And again, go to my website, go to that page, and I describe everything in detail. I describe, does Superman have this box variation? And when I find it does, I add that to it. So again, that's where you understand where, my should exist, but maybe doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to go into some games that probably should be invested in. If you look at some other people's, they put down the rare stuff, the Crazy Climber or the Gravatar or the Water World, things that were released, they said, through the club. Some things were released really in limited quantities. But again, you have to watch, that's fine because that's known, but you have to watch later games. I have one here. I'll get to it because, like I said, these warehouses have been popping up with quantities. And this is where I'm going to go back and where I was going to say about probably shouldn't be worth too much. But 1996, there was a place called O'Shea. I think he still exists, but he doesn't have any Atari games anymore. He had 2600. I'm trying to think if he had, I don't think he had 5200, 7800 definitely. And I believe that might have been it. And he had bought out Atari. He had some kind, I don't know if it's a cave or something he kept it in. It was some kind of warehouse, but I think he called it the cave because it was cool. Mid United States. I don't remember if it was Indiana, Kentucky, somewhere in there. So O'Shea, I don't know how I found them. Probably through news groups because the websites weren't existing. and I bought 600 games, all sealed, for the 2600, 7800. I paid 87 cents shipped to me, and I was in New Jersey. And, so I'm thinking, okay, I kept one for myself of each. Now, some things were limited, he made you buy in cases. So you always hear about case fresh. So a case on these Atari games are 6, unless otherwise I don't know about, but there's 6 sealed games in a case. And they were marked on the outside with the product number, so you knew exactly, because they were sealed. So you're hoping that what you're getting inside is based on what's written outside. But it was pretty consistent. I didn't have too many problems with it. But I'll get into some of the 7800 stuff was that I got actually was rare, but he didn't have too many quantities. So I remember, I think there was a couple of copies of Millipede, which I actually have a sealed one here, but it's not shrink wrapped. The one in my collection is shrink wrapped. But you have Millipede. So what is worth? I'm going to say popular, but you have to discover rarity. So Combat has, I think, 15 different box variations that I've documented. First one's probably a good one, like the gatefold, to get graded, to invest in this, unless it's really, especially if it's high grade. What I wanted to cover was, and I'm going to get into this because this is specifics, but when Atari came back out in 85 and 86, they changed their name to Atari Core, which I'm going to show you this gray box. There's certain boxes that are gray boxes. It says Atari Core in the middle, and then eventually it turns to Atari Corporation. So it was Atari Inc. originally, then 85 comes around, it's Atari Core. This is where you have to investigate whether or not something's going to be worth money. So gray box, there's a lot of gray box variations out there. They're pretty popular as a collecting. So if you're going to collect games, I was one customer a couple of weeks ago. He wanted to buy games he had as a kid. I tried to find nicer box copies, but he wanted games he wanted as a kid. He didn't say anything about expanding because, like I said, there's over 600 different just U.S. released Atari games. We're not going to get into all the rip-off, knockoffs, foreign variations. I don't even know what they are now. 4,000 maybe, 5,000, 6,000. So it's impossible to collect everything unless you have an endless bank account, which most people don't. But popular games, Space Invaders, Pac-Man, a lot of the arcade games, that stuff, again, 82 Pac-Man's common. If you find it sealed, it's probably common. In fact, that became the Pac-In game after Combat was boring and wasn't graphic-wise, wouldn't have produced, like enthusiasm with the player, the person playing the games. They wanted the graphics have changed, had changed in 5 years. It changed in 2 years. And nowadays, forget it. It's like the technology is like crazy. So you want to stick with something that's popular but rare. And again, this is where you do your homework. So there isn't, if I remember right, there's a gray Pac-Man. Probably good investment. Why? Because there's not too many gray Pac-Mans. You'll find 82 Pac-Mans all day. I find 100 of them to maybe one gray Pac-Man. So the guy covered in that video, his suggestion was he had a sealed ET. Everybody loves ET. Oh yeah, they made 1 million of them. They buried them in that landfill. They never found 1 million of them. They found a few hundred, I think. There might have been, and they just got really trashed, but I don't think so. Because there were other games besides ET, but 82 ET is not rare. Cartridge-wise, I think when that video came out, I might have had 15 to 20 loose copies. Boxed, yeah, okay. I think I was getting $12 to $15 before that video, and then they were up to 25. Now people are asking $40, $50 sometimes. But again, I always sold based on box condition. My own, just saying there's a crease, there's a tear, there's a sticker pull. But his suggestion for an 82 sealed ET, I wouldn't suggest 82 sealed ET. I would suggest 1986 Atari Core ET. Um, Actually, if you find that boxed in nice condition, it's probably worth grading because, again, there might be 1 to 100 copies of the other ET. And finding box stuff in general is not that common. People always say, "Oh yeah, there's tons of it out there." Well, it depends. There might be 25,000 copies. Now, if there's 25,000 collectors, you know, then that satisfies the demand. I didn't mention that supply and demand in the first video, but I think most people just know that logically. So if there's 100 copies, of that ET from '86. Now I've come across cartridges from it, and again, selling loose cartridges, you can get cartridges graded, you can get completing the box graded, you can get sealed graded. Sometimes a loose cartridge is worth grading anyway. It depends on the price of the grading, depends on what you're paying for it. So, do I suggest investing thousands of dollars into a game? Not at all. Unless it's like this guy mentioned, it's one of those super rare sealed mail order or whatever game limited thing, or it's a super rare variant. Other than that, I wouldn't suggest putting any big money in. Um, Again, this is early on, ground floor, not as ground floor as when I got into it. I mean, I was paying nothing, and I amassed thousands. So those sealed games I paid 87 cents, I was getting $5 to $8 for, and I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm making a killing. I'm making 5 to 8 times my money or whatever. And again, it's investing. How much room do you have? Because 600 games take up a lot of room, and I had them stacked and stuff. And I have, I don't have that many left. A few dozen, more 7,800 than 2,600. But I had to store them, and when you have comic books and you have cards and all this other stuff, there's always limitation with space. And unless you have a big house, which I never owned a house until a few months ago. Again, even with my house, I still have limited space. So my suggestions on popular games or stuff, like I said, Pac-Man, no, unless it's the late version. There is a yellow version. I don't know if it's 87, 88 or something out there. Again, that's probably worth doing. But, common games aren't worth it at all. So I pulled this out of my collection. It is a sealed Raiders of the Lost Ark. And again, this is the 1982 version. It is common, but not common. So finding it sealed, you'll find copies sealed. But now you might, because of this big craze coming up, you might be paying $100 or more. And again, is that worth it? Probably. If you pay $100, because what? Everybody knows Indiana Jones. It's super popular. It has lots of movies. Harrison Ford, crossover with Star Wars and things. So it's something that's probably worth buying if you can get it for the right price. Grade it, pay $30, $35, whatever a grading fee is. And then, investing. Are you going to do short term or long term? My suggestion, if you're doing it now, get rid of it. If somebody will give you $1,000 for your copy that you pay $100 for, grab it, because it might be worth more than your 100, 2, 4, 5, 10 years from now, but it's probably not going to be worth the $1,000 if that's what a going market is right now. Because you saw it with the Spider-Man. First one sold for $9, then you see one sell for $5. Now it's down to like $1,800, and that's because people realize there's copies out there, and that first one is always a good one, but you have to be the first to do it. And so holding on to, say, Raiders of the Lost Ark, if somebody's willing to give me $1,000 for that, I would take it in a heartbeat. Because somewhere along the line, I'm just going to buy another one, and maybe I'll pay $300 for it. But who cares? Because I just made a huge profit, so I just re-bought what I was missing, and now I got all this extra money. I'm going to talk about some of the kids' games that were released for Atari and by Atari. But sometimes they're not really kids' games, but something popular. I have the Roadrunner. This isn't a child released game, but this was based on the arcade game, and I remember playing this, and it was 85 or something, 86. You'd go to a pizzeria during lunch during high school, and Roadrunner was there, and you're eating all the little seeds, and then you have Wile E. Coyote chasing you. And again, this is sealed, and this copy specifically says 1989, and it says printed in Hong Kong, made in China. I didn't look this up. Maybe I should have, but there might be 4 or 5 versions of Roadrunner out there, and you're going to discover that, especially with the red boxes. And I find China by itself and Taiwan by itself seem to be the rarest usually. Hong Kong is the most most common. So when you find this Venezuela warehouse guy, and he's got 100 copies, and he shows you a scan of the front and back, and the backs, a lot of times they'll say printed in Hong Kong, made in Hong Kong, or made in Hong Kong, printed in Hong Kong. Sometimes they reverse them. There's 2 variations. One printed, sometimes the type, the font is smaller. It's the exact same words, smaller font, larger font. I count everything as a variation. And you'll see sometimes it'll be released in 86, 87, 88, and then you'll have, next thing you know, you have a red box version. People are like, oh yeah, I got this red box version, and there's 6 different variations for it. You're going to see that like with Battlezone. 87 is rarer than 88. Some of the real sports games, 86 might be rare. 87 will be a little more common. 88 is the most common most of the time. But you'll find that even the gray box versions, if there's a gray box version released in 86 and that was the only release, that's probably worth buying. If there's gray box versions like some of the real sports, basketball, regular basketball, real sports, volleyball and tennis and stuff, there's probably versions, if I remember right, there might be 3 or 4 different gray box versions, 87, 88, different printed maidens. And so you want to be careful on that, because some of that stuff is common. You could find it, literally, 3 years ago for $5, $8 a piece. But now everybody's getting greedy. Oh, it's sealed and stuff. And you got to watch, because condition, of course, matters. People will be selling something sealed for $25 and it'll say dented box. Well, do you really want a dented box? As I came across stuff, if I was missing it, it went in my collection. And I'm the type of person who tries to collect everything most of the time. But that's who I am. So Roadrunner, though not a child's release game by Atari, was, it's geared, everybody likes Bugs Bunny and stuff. Sticking with Looney Tunes, I got Taz. My Taz is again sealed, but this time it's creased. Now I have these plastic boxes I had bought before they were making them and advertising them for video games. I actually found one of the companies that make plastic bags and boxes and stuff, and just figured out what size I needed. In fact, the guy sent me a couple of samples so I could test out, what fits. So there's a little room in it, because some of these games are actually bigger, fatter, taller, and stuff. So these were the general size. But Taz, again, this is dated 88. This might be worth more than an earlier release of Taz. I don't know. I haven't really investigated. Because once I have some stuff, if I have all the variations known, I'm not really looking in, what's going to be super rare. So I'm going to show you. I'm trying to think of. This is another one, but there was several years ago. It was like Harry Warriors and Motor Rodeo, and I didn't pull out my Motor Rodeo, and I got them both sealed. They were rare, and I'm talking about on the rare list. People were asking over $100 at the time. You're talking 15 years ago. They were asking over $100 for the games. And then all of a sudden, and you were paying it, it was like complete, but like open. And then all of a sudden, Venezuela shows up and copies start flying out the door. And you have to watch, because somebody might have 100 copies and they release one at a time, and the market stays high. But then when you have multiple warehouses, or that one person decides to flood the market with 25 copies, all of a sudden prices plummet. So I believe I didn't pay more than $20 or $25 for my copies brand new sealed. I'm trying to remember if I bought them from Venezuela or somebody who got them from Venezuela as a second, like a middleman or something. Because a lot of times somebody will buy quantities, and now right now is the best time for it, grading and stuff. But at the time, you just try to make a little profit on it. And who knew that this would ever pick up? I mean, I'm 50 years old now. Atari's old. Most of the people my age, I don't know, they're thinking not quite retirement, but I was 7 when Atari came out. Some other people might have been, a little older. If you're in your teens, if you're 15 when Atari came out or something, you're pushing 60. And so Akari Warriors and which most people, if you played the video games in the arcades, you'll remember that game. Motor Rodeo, I don't believe was released as an arcade machine, but I could be wrong. Those two games flooded the market. Now, I think they've steadily gone up a little. They might have even reached higher because, again, people are getting greedy. But whether or not they're actually worth buying at higher prices, I don't know, because that's something that's, quantity out there. So another game. A lot of these games that were released, you'll see, this is Clax. I think this is 89 also. Nope, this is 90. Made in China. Now, this might be the only version. There might be another variation. But again, most people aren't going to know. And that's the other thing. You might have a rare variation. I couldn't find. I was very upset yesterday with one of the Atari Core variations. But Clax itself, people might say, okay, you're going to sell Clax. Okay. This variation, made in China, say there is a printed in Hong Kong, made in Hong Kong version. I don't know offhand, but this might be 50 to 1. You get one of these to the Hong Kong versions. But unless people are aware of it and really care, you have to have the person who actually really cares about it. And I dealt with somebody probably 10 to 12 years ago. And this guy was helping me out with the website too. This guy had money. He was a foreigner. I don't know, it's sure Germany, I think, or something. And he was seeking out all these red boxes. I guess I don't know if he was doing earlier stuff, but he was looking for every variation, every printed in Taiwan, China, whatever it was. And there's certain things that he had access to or found, and he said he was paying great money. And I brought him up because of the next game I'm going to show you, which is one of the kids' games, Snoopy and the Red Baron. Now, this game is probably worth buying. Now, this is sealed. I actually acquired a couple of, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 copies of this particular game through a trade, again, late 90s. But this person who was into all these variations was begging me to sell him this. And it was my own collection. I'm like, I didn't want to part with it. And if you're attached to your collection, most likely you're not going to part with it. So this guy became my enemy because I would not, he wouldn't admit to it. But right after the fact that I would not sell him this, all of a sudden he didn't want to help me. And anytime I acquired a scan from him, even through another website. So sometimes I'll go to different websites, and if I found proof of a variation that I didn't have on mine, I would take the scan and then just put it up there. And he was threatening me with lawsuits and things. You can't use my scans and stuff. And I had to ask the person who owned the website, is this scan from that guy and stuff? It was a nightmare. And the reason why is because this is a 1986 version. And he didn't have it. So he wanted to give me, I think it was like $125 plus a sealed, I think it was 83 version, the original one. No, it's not on here. But this is rare. So if I would have sold this to him for $125, if you're a collector, and once this takes off, if it takes off, this grading thing, you get a Snoopy sealed from 83, you might get $1,000. You might get $2,000. I don't even know. I don't know if there's any out there. There might be 1 or 2 right now. But then you get this 1986 version sealed. I might get $8,000, $10,000 more. I don't know. So this is something, if you came across, is a great long-term investment. And I was mentioning about being upset yesterday. Casino, very, very common game, came out in 78. Several variations are out there. And there was an 86 dated cartridge, Atari core. So if there's an 86 cartridge, there has to be an 86 box. Now, it's possible sometimes they release a game, say in 86, but there's no 86 box and there's an 87 box or something. But there was no other box past 82, I think, on Casino. So I have this cartridge. I think I even had copies. I never kept every variation. I didn't have the room for it. If something was really strange, like those gray boxes, I might keep copies of those. If they had different print fonts, like Raiders of the Lost Ark 86 came out, it says Raiders Lost Ark on the end label. I actually have a box version of that with that error. They call it an error, pole position. It's called pole position. Galaxian, I think, had a bigger font on one of them. But again, those are things that, if they're rare enough, I think Centipede 2 might have had a font difference. Just grading the cartridge, or if you can find the cartridge with the original box version. That's the other thing. It's a lot of stuff you can marry, and it's not documented. It's very difficult to document when a specific cartridge, box, and manual go together. So sometimes they just had extras, and like they'll change the box, but they still have all these manuals, so they'll still use the older manual. And a lot of times you'll see little revisions made on boxes, the REV number. But this Casino, I could not, for my life, I could not find proof that this box existed. I know it did. I just could not find proof. I looked all the time. I checked every website. I used to use like 3, 4, 5 different websites besides going to, the auction place where everybody lists stuff. And so I think it was last year I bought a lot of games. And the guy had put down, there's a couple of sealed games. I think Battlezone Sealed was in. And again, it's probably one of the more common ones. That's not worth too much. And sure enough, I see backgammon. And I'm looking at the back, and it says Atari Core 1986, and it's sealed. And the box is beat up. But I'm like, hey, this is rare. Not impossible, because I had the scan of it. And all of a sudden, this Casino, and I turn it around, and it's the Atari Core 1986. I said, you got to be kidding me. And then I'm looking at it, and it's sealed. And again, its box is a little dented, but I've never seen a box version of this, let alone a sealed version. So again, how much is this worth? Well, to a normal person, Casino, it's a crappy game. It's just playing cards and stuff. But you get somebody out there saying, okay, this is 1 in 1,000, maybe. Like I said, I've never seen one before. So how do you even determine it? Sometimes you have to let the market grow, and people start getting into all the variations. It's like the comic books. You have all of a sudden newsstand versions. Nobody cared, 20, 25 years ago for newsstands. Actually, we'll get into comics. I'm not going to get into that because this video is long enough. Actually, it's very long. But you know what? If you want, you could pause at any time and come back to it. I'm not going to cut the video because sometimes I get on little tangents. But once I'm in the zone, I don't want to be breaking it off and create part 2, because, again, I'm going to be covering tons and tons of stuff. So, I was so happy with this Casino. So unless, people recognize and want variants, there's going to be no value to them. So the Spider-Man $9,000 Parker Brothers or whatever, now down to 1,800, it's one version that's out there that's the most common. But when you turn around and you start pulling out the French version or the German version and, some of these international things, or just variations themselves of U.S. made. I mean, Star Wars, I can show you that in a little while too. There might be 4 versions released in the U.S. alone. So Snoopy and the Red Baron, well worth it. Here's another one I think is going to be worth it. Mickey Mouse, Sorcerer's Apprentice. This is the regular 1983 version. And the kids' versions of games, checkered patterns, They have the Sesame Street. There's 4 games for Sesame Streets. You'll see Big Bird or Alpha Beam with Ernie or Oscar's Trash Race. Cookie Monster Munch. Here's a perfect example. Find the Cookie Monster Munch sealed from 1983. Tough. You go online, there was some guy selling them. I don't know if he's selling them anymore, but he had them for years. He had 6 packs of the 86 version. Buy a sealed case, and it was $30 for the 6 of them. So you're paying $5 a piece. They were international. They're PAL. If people are into, again, you're buying sealed stuff, it doesn't matter playability. You don't care if it, as long as you think it works. I mean, it's sealed. You don't even know if it works. I'm going to get to that in another separate thing here. But the playability on some of these, when you have a PAL, that's foreign. The frame rate, the refresh rate on your TV is different in Europe than it is in the U.S. So when you put a PAL game into a U.S. TV, the screen will roll. And if you have an old TV like I do, which I test my Atari stuff on, you have that vertical hold, like the vertical and horizontal. You balance, and so it doesn't flip. So this guy had tons of these Cookie Monster Munch foreign 1986 PAL versions. That's something I don't care if they're sealed or not. This guy was selling them by the case for $30, $5 a game. So you know that they're out there. It's like that the 88 Battle Zone, or the 88 Real Sports Baseballs or something like that. There's tons of it out there. So my suggestion, if you're going to try to invest in variations on games, you're going to have to do your homework, because most people aren't going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. I mean, I'm making some suggestions, so I'm letting out a few secrets here and there. But my website mentions cartridges being rare, but doesn't mention boxes being rare, certain manuals or something like that. If a game is rare, it's going to be worth money, plain and simple. But again, are you going to be able to find it? So I want to move on to. I'm throwing this in there. I found things. I'm going to mention a website just for, even though I said I would try to avoid it. Atari Age. Very, very, what do you call it? A nice guy, Al, who runs Atari Age. Very informative. It's all Atari. And you could discuss other things, but he gears just toward Atari, not necessarily 2600, anything Atari. And he actually hosts my website. So I don't have to worry about space and paying and stuff. Because, again, I'm not making any money on my site. So I'm already paying for my domain name. But Atari Age took some of the prototypes of Atari games, but were never released. And they created limited edition versions. They printed out boxes, made the cartridges, made manuals. So I just wanted to show a few. And I have no clue if they're worth anything. Well, they're probably worth something, because, I mean, even at the time, I probably paid $50 at least for each game. But I thought it was cool that sometimes they say, how much of the game was finished. Prototypes are a whole nother thing. I have several prototypes for the Atari games. Again, because I started early. Nowadays, you probably can't find anything. And when I say prototypes, I'm talking about unreleased prototypes, games that weren't released. So here's one, never released, real sports basketball. And they made a limited production run of 250, and mine's 107. So if you go to my site, I actually opened these because they weren't shrink wrapped. Actually, the Charlie Brown, I think, is shrink wrapped. But they weren't shrink wrapped. So I opened them, scanned the manual, scanned the cartridge. So, it's up on the website. But you're going to see these pop up once in a while. You'll see we sometimes homebrew, but these are prototypes that people dump the ROM and then they just burn it on, a new cartridge and create their own versions out there. And sometimes you have to worry about forgeries, counterfeits with stuff. But a lot of times you'll know if it's legitimate. There are people out there, especially on Atari Age, there are certain people who deal in prototypes, and if you send them your prototype, they can actually verify. I mean, you'd have to trust them, but I would trust the mail less than the person I'm sending it to, whether or not I'd get it back. So another game that was never released, Saboteur. And this one's not listed as a limited. It probably still was. I guess sometimes they didn't number and things, but they have a screenshot. Yeah, try to tilt it so because it's in the plastic. Um, this is one of my favorite, Bugs Bunny. Uh, this again was not listed as a specific limit, even though I think it is. And this was one of the earlier ones because if you look at the quality of the photo, it's not as good as some of the other things. But then again, there's some screenshots, and you can go online. A lot of times you can play these with emulators and stuff. Um, this one I thought was very nicely done. This is something that should have been released for the kids. Snow White. This is again limited to 250. This is copy 115. And no, don't put in comments, I'll buy that from you, I'll buy that from you. I'm not selling it, any of them. Here's one of my favorites, Charlie Brown. Good luck, Charlie Brown. And this doesn't say how many were made, but it is number 51. And again, you see the little screenshot of Charlie Brown flying his kite. And I love Peanuts. I love Charlie Brown. So no, I'm not going to part with that either. Same reason why I didn't part with um, my Snoopy and the Red Baron. Okay.